Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, the day after the election, I'm still kind of curious why it's taken this long for us to have results. Having worked in the Bureau of Elections in San Juan County and knowing the county clerk and having known several of them and knowing what they do, this is their bag. And I'm pretty positive that San Juan County, not San Juan College, San Juan County is just finishing up canvassing for absentee ballots. Now, we've had early voting for months now, okay? I'm surprised, or for at least a month in New Mexico. I just don't understand why all these things that people from the right, specifically, Carrie Lake, even Donald Trump, have talked about election problems. Yet we find out the day after the election, our big election, our midterm election, that there was a lot of the same issues that were going on in 2022. That doesn't inspire a lot of people. And with that, I've said before, Freemen don't ask permission. Well, let's link back to that. If they can't even get this right, what makes them think that we should be following every one of their laws? Now, again, I'm not advocating for you to break the law. I'm advocating you to look at your own code of ethics, look at your own moral compass. You know what's right, you know what's wrong, and act accordingly. So, to the fun stuff. I'm kind of happy to see in northwest New Mexico, the 2A is still strong. And I live in a very red county with a very red group of people, and not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. They're just as dogmatic as the left in some cases. What I do know, though, is that up here, at least the Constitution still matters. It may not matter to a lot of the state, it may not matter to a lot of the country right now, but it matters. That's what our founding documents were. But why I was thinking about up here in northwest New Mexico specifically has to do with, I just noticed a brand new gun store last week. That doesn't happen in my corner of the woods where we get new gun stores, period. Most of them have been around for 10, 20 years plus. There's people that have gotten into doing the background checks, the NCIC background checks, so that they can facilitate gun transfers. The bunker in Farmington, New Mexico does that. My associates at Go Rogue are opening their own sporting goods and their own gun store very shortly, so they'll be there too. But there's one in Aztec now called Cocopelli. Again, I haven't had a chance to go in. I think it's kind of ironic that next door is a pot dispensary. Now, again, I don't care about the weed thing, but it's hilarious that you can go to the same little strip mall, run into the two things that are controversial by two different parties. One on the right says weed should never be a thing, and then on the left you have firearms that says no, you shouldn't have them. Now, if you own firearms, you cannot smoke weed legally. It is a prohibited substance, and it makes you basically a felon because you lied on your Form 473 if you're doing weed. Again, Freemen don't ask permission. I tell you to do whatever the hell you want. I'm saying we should take the cues, like I said last night, from how weed has basically become legal in states like New Mexico and California and Illinois, and do the same type of thing with the 2A. We make it so ubiquitous and so not enforceable by sheer number that we just don't do it. Peaceful non-compliance. That's what this is called. This is what Dr. Martin Luther King had talked about. But it makes me think that there's some optimism when you start seeing new gun stores. I don't know if it'll take off, because in the area here, there's a lot that has to be done with reputation. And when I say that, most gun stores here that have been around here for 20 plus years, they have a strong reputation with their customer base. You can't break that overnight. and with the accessibility of being able to purchase online and then go to a store and get a background check, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have a brick and mortar building just to do background checks or just to run firearms. Maybe if you're marking them up to sell them, I'm sure that's what gun stores do. That's how they make money. But it's cool that we're seeing more options for the 2A here. Now, I think I'm still one of the biggest proponents in the Northwest New Mexico of being an AK guy. I have some friends who are AK guys, but they're not quite as big as me into the AK world. I have a few of them. I've built my first one ever from scratch. From a parts kit. I won't ever call it scratch because I didn't actually cold hammer forge parts. But I now have a Kalashnikov, an AK-74. It's a Belgian AK, a Bulgarian AK. It's a bulgy AK. KVAR basically made the parts. I just assembled them in the right place. Now, when you say assemble versus an AR-15, it's a misnomer. An AR-15, you really are just plugging in parts and you're swapping things, okay? And an AK, you actually have to have equipment and knowledge. You have to have presses. You have to have things like that. So that's why I always laugh at these leftists, these extreme leftists, that think that gun control is still a viable option for anything. If anything, what has happened is, and I've talked about this at infinitum too, is that we've gotten to a point in society where our technology has surpassed the government. You having access to 3D printers, you having access to tools, you having access to the knowledge was always by design by our federal government, so that if we had to use those pieces to get around our federal government, we could. Now that we're kind of at that point where bifurcation, if you don't know what bifurcation means, it means where we split up. The United States has been in a cold civil war for probably about 6 years. We have left and right factions who are fighting, and then there's us in the middle who are libertarian, is who I claim to be. I'm becoming more of an ANCAP daily, especially after last night, because I don't believe that any central power is going to do any good for the individual. And where we have the biggest problem and potential for growth in the United States is with decentralization. But with decentralization, I'm talking about at the person level now. Because we've found that even decoupling at the city and the state level isn't an option. Because there are parts of each state, even deep red states, that would buck seceding. So rather than secede, why don't we double down and start taking ownership on our own, for our own selves, our own defenses, our own ammunition, our ammunition sources, our guns. We have to defend on ourselves. We have to be ready to take care of ourselves in every situation. Most of people in the 2A already are in that mind. You're not the type to sit there and go, well, my car broke, but I don't know why. Either you're going to fix it or you're going to find the right person to fix it. And these are the type of individuals that exist in the 2A and what we are about. We aren't the helpless little Bettys or little Johnnies who need every little bit of assistance from the federal government or the state government. In fact, we've always existed in a situation or an area where we kind of just wish the government would go away. The pluses for the government let's cover those. What were supposed to be the pluses for the government? 1, schools. Well, with all the woke crap, I don't know that working for schools or being in schools is a good plan right now. I know there are a lot of people trying to make sure that we are actively opposing the machine, but the machine refuses to die. Roads. Anyone driven in New Mexico has known what our roads are like. If we are paying for roads, then where are they? Because our roads suck in New Mexico badly. Any city, any part of New Mexico you go to, you find potholes, you find seams. It's like they don't understand how to build roads. And they do it very temporarily. And I understand we have some of the harshest weather to contend with, but that doesn't make a lot of sense when it comes to roads. Roads have been around since the Romans' times. This is something we should have the technology figured out. Okay, what else does the government do? The post office. How many times have we in the last 10 years heard about the post office needing more money just to do what they do? Need I talk about the DMV, the licensing you need just to drive a vehicle? Or to, like, register your vehicle and have a license for it, pay a tax on it? Taxation is theft. And even when you opt out of the system by self-educating your kids, or homeschooling them is what that's actually called, it's still a thing where you have to pay for schools with your taxes. Now, a lot of people don't really care about paying for better schools. I was one of those for a long time. But we're 46th in the nation in New Mexico. Why? And that's what you have to keep asking yourself. The reason why is because there's no other way to put it. We've had Democrats ruling the state for 97 years. And that's above and beyond the governor. We had a Republican governor last time, and she was hamstrung by the House and the Senate of New Mexico, because you cannot do anything without having the House and the Senate to back you. I don't know what it is about people in New Mexico. I don't know why they seem to think that they need so much from the government, because the government has let us down time and time again. Our governor, Michelle Grisham, locked us down. I was one of those few people that dealt with someone that passed during the COVID stuff. And there was a very real fear that I wasn't going to see my father in his final days. It wasn't until we had to set up home care, hospice care at home, where he was at home because hospitals suck, but I could spend time with him there. So could my brothers, so could my mother, so could his friends, as he finished out his life. I know of someone personally, other than myself, who had a family member die in the hospital during the height of the COVID stuff. And their family member didn't even get to make peace with their family or talk to their family. They died alone. Now, I worry about that with my mom, but my mom wasn't alone. And when I say that, the only reason why I wasn't there the night that she went to the hospital was I was told, and so was she, that this was a very minor thing, and since it happened like this before, we were in a good place. All in all, I'm not a huge fan of the government. I'm proud to be a United States citizen. I'm proud to be a New Mexican. This is my home, and I want to get it back. But until we can make up ground, we have to be covert insurgents. What does that mean? That means going to rallies, but going peacefully to where we're not seen as a threat. It also means that we abide by the rules that we know are legitimate and the laws that are legitimate. So some final thoughts on the election and what was going on. Like, share, subscribe, be great.